We're talking with our friend Neil Greenberg. He's a father of two, and the kids are always sick. He's also a sports writer and a stats geek, not a nerd for the Washington Post. What do you make of cut day? A lot changed yesterday. Who do you think has the best roster in the league? Maybe, and where do the Commanders rank? Is it near the bottom?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Washington will rank near the bottom only because no one knows how to evaluate it. And I'm not saying this because people are dumb. It's because there's just too many new things to say with any definitive answer that they're an above-average roster, a below-average roster, an average. Like we just don't know. So anytime I see any sort of projections or rankings for Washington, there's a lot of guesswork that goes into it. And I've talked about this before where, sure, I saw like PFF may have had them at like 27th, but the error bar for that really is like 16 to the worst, right? Like average to the worst team in the league, which is too big of a spread to really be helpful for anybody. I'm not going to break any ground here. Obviously, I think, San Francisco, Kansas City, Philadelphia, I would even put the Jets in there, Baltimore. I mean, like these are going to be the rosters near the top. And, let's wait and see what guys get picked up and where they slot, because that could change things a little bit. But, it's a tough day. I'm sure I've never had to deal with it. But, you're talking about people's dreams being smashed a little bit. And, that's sad. But the NFL, there's always opportunity.
Yep.
And I think for these guys, they have to keep a little glimmer of hope because injuries are just a part of the league. And you never know when you're going to get another shot.
Has it changed some, Neil, in the fact that you cut down and then you bring 17 people back?
I mean, has like my rankings changed?
No, I'm just saying, like, because I know when you got cut back in the day, wasn't that many opportunities to stay on either a practice squad or whatever. And if you're on a practice squad, somebody get hurt, they call you up, you get a game check. So has it changed a little bit?
And that's lucrative in of itself.
Yes.
And we just never know. Like, you never know what opportunities could have presented itself. We're always talking, at the end of the season of the surprises. And a lot of times it's a guy that was on the practice squad or right place, right time, or was put in a game and did something special and the coach liked it and gave him another opportunity and is able to build on it. Like, we don't know who that those people are going to be, but we do know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, that's part of what makes the sport exciting.
I mean, it's the best sport in the world because you never know what the hell is going to happen. Did any specific moves that the Commanders made surprise you, or did anything kind of really stand out?
I was surprised at the Dotson trade. Only because the wide receiver depth was not great. And you figure a guy like him, has some upside. Maybe they keep him around, try to make it work. But once they traded him to a division, rival that's a Super Bowl contender, I mean, that told me everything that I needed to know about, where they think his career is going. So that surprised me a little bit because usually we hear about like talent winning out, and I felt like he had talent. It just didn't seem like it meshed with anything here. And, there's been a lot of turnover on the Washington roster. You've reported it. We've reported it. The last few draft classes haven't been great. So it's much more of a clean slate. I didn't think that he was going to be one of the guys that was part of the clean slate. But, again, they're in the building. I'm not. And, they made the decision.
I think if you're trying to make sure people understand that you mean business, everybody got the message right there.
Right? Like that shows you that, you need to make some stuff happen or, you're not going to be here. I thought like Noah Brown was a little bit surprising. I know that they have a ton of options there. But that was a little bit surprising to me.
That Noah Brown
I try to give the front office the benefit of the doubt because they have so much more information than me. But just going by the buzz of who may be scooped up quickly, those are just a couple. That's a name that jumped out.
What Washington sitting there with the second waiver claim. Is Noah Brown a guy you think would make a lot of sense for them?
I think so. I mean, they brought in Matavius Bryant. That didn't work. They've been saying since the preseason started that they didn't really know who was going to be the second wide receiver. Noah Brown's 28 years old. It's not like he's football old for that position. I just think that he got squeezed out, right? I mean, there was Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Bell. That's a tough spot to be in. I mean, it's hard to make a case to play ahead of any of those guys. So, it certainly wasn't a performance issue. He had a 2-week stretch last year where he had over 300 yards when Collins and Dell weren't available. So yeah, I think it's definitely somewhat. Look, if you're going to kick the tires on Bryant, I think you owe it to yourself to kick the tires on Noah Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a lot of sense. As we zoom out here, we're talking with our friend Neil Greenberg from the Washington Post. You can give him a follow at Neil Greenberg, at Neil N. Greenberg, rather. Pardon me. As we get closer and closer to the season, I mean, we got college football coming up tomorrow night. Fantasy starting to really kick off. Is there anything around the league that you are watching that you could see as like some type of trend that emerges? I know scoring was way down in the preseason, but I don't know how much you could take from preseason. Like, what is your eye on as the season is, 8 days away for the opener?
14 home favorites, the most since 2014. That's a lot of home favorites, and I think that there's going to be a lot of home disappointment this year. Historically speaking, when there's that many home favorites, 10 or more, they don't cover very well. The last winning season for home favorites to cover was 2007. So I'm looking at a road favorite, which I texted you earlier, the Houston Texans -2.5, which I'll talk about in a second. But I'm really just keeping an eye on the key numbers, and this is a week where I play more numbers than teams. So if I have the Chicago Bears -4.5, I'll probably look at the Tennessee Titans side, because just the way the margin of victory works in the NFL, but with 3s and 7s, there aren't very many games that end on a 4-5 or even 6. So I'm betting more numbers than I am actual teams this week. But I do think that there's probably too many home favorites, and I think a lot of them are going to fall. But I do like the Texans -2.5 this week.
When you look at the preseason games and you go with the unders, when you look at the way that they don't play a lot of starters during preseason, do you look at any of those totals in the first few weeks?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at a first half total in the Minnesota Vikings New York Giants game. I took the over 21.5 points in the first half. I think the new kickoff rules is going to help some of the scoring, especially early. Opening day excitement. I don't think that these teams are necessarily very good, which leads to actually more points because they make mistakes. On both sides of the ball. So I'm actually eyeing that part. And I will probably be on some overs earlier in the season, as I said, because of the kickoff rules, because I do think field position is going to be a lot different than what we've seen in the past. And there's always going to be like a learning curve with your regular starters in actual games. But the Vikings-Giants game is something for the first half I'm excited about.
When you look at the Vikings, and I know you're a fantasy, you like it and play it on a significant level, do you think Justin Jefferson can continue to produce at the level that we've kind of gotten used to, even with Sam Darnold, presumably a quarterback?
Yes, because fantasy football is about opportunity and volume, and they're going to get him the ball. So, yeah, I do think that he can sustain that production. It's all about targets, and I do think that he's going to be a main focal point of the offense. I've seen him kind of come down on draft boards. He's like the 5th wide receiver taken, and perhaps if Kirk Cousins was still there, maybe he'd be like 3rd. But I do think the volume will be there where he'll be able to smash week in and week out.
So I'm going to just get hyper personal here. I have the 7th pick in a 12-team fantasy league. Now this is a very old school league, right? The only thing that matters, it's 2 running backs, 2 receivers, no flex, no PPR, a quarterback, a tight end, a defense, and a kicker. At 7, do I have to overdraft a running back? Like, am I going to take Jahmyr Gibbs or Devin A-Chain or something?
No, you're going to take Saquon Barkley.
Really? You're high on Saquon.
Yeah, he's going from playing behind the worst offensive line to the best. He'll be in situations where Philadelphia will be leading a lot more, so there'll be a lot more touches, a lot more opportunities for him to rush the football. He'll probably be involved in the passing game as well. You're kind of at a weird spot there because the big 3 is going to be gone, and Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson more than likely.
Right.
If not, you definitely grab one of those. But I do think you reach a little bit, let them laugh or do the LOLs or whatever they want to do. But I think Saquon Barkley is much, much better spot, and a lot of people are focusing too much on the performance with the Giants and not projecting forward enough with the improvement of the Philadelphia Eagles.
See, I'm loving this because JP gonna have to pick somebody in Philly and cheer for him.
I know what jersey he can get.
I might get
while
stabbed.
He's rooting for the Eagles.
Apparently, there's an Eagles fan trying to take over our chat on the YouTube page.
He might get beat down.
We'll see how it goes. So you're riding for Saquon. Interesting, man.
In that spot, yes, because I think your choices are Gibbs or Jonathan Taylor, and I think is higher than both, and I think the floor is the same. So I think when you're looking at what your draft's going to look like, you're much better off going with Barkley, and I would even I might even follow that back up with another running back, and then just look for some value in wide receivers as you go along. But I'd be fine taking Barkley in the middle of
help him out, Neil. He needs the help.
Who are some of the value receivers you think are out there?
I definitely think that you can see like Pickens later. I know a lot of people aren't as high on Pickens. He's going in the 6th round. I think you can definitely get him in round 5 and be happy. Amari Cooper's in the 4th round. You have a guy like Tank Dell. We talked about him earlier. I think there's plenty of wide receivers. There's so much passing in the league now. Like you can trip over a wide receiver and have get some decent depth. I think running back, get a couple wideouts, and then you start focusing on like the quarterback, and then you just wait for a tight end because it's so top heavy after Travis Kelce and Laporta that you just wait and get some guy with value.
Who's the first tight end going off? First quarterback going off the board.
It should be Josh Allen in the 3rd round, followed by Mahomes. But I think like Jalen Hurts in the 4th round, or even Lamar Jackson in the 4th round, will be just as good. You definitely want a dual threat quarterback because they outproduce their peers by a wide margin. So I would even say if you think that like Joe Burrow, depending on how you feel about his health, but even Jaden Daniels late, I think if he's going to be involved in the running game in any sort of capacity, sliding or not, as like a 9th round pick, I think he can absolutely outperform that average draft position.
What do you make? People are the amount of excitement around Anthony Richardson with the Colts for a dude that just has not passed very much. I mean, he has not played very much. What do you make of Richardson this year?
Yeah, he's I think that goes back to the talent, right? I mean, like he, top pick, put in a situation right away, didn't really work out. But I don't think I don't think he was terrible. But I think the offseason for Indianapolis was okay. They had some injuries that they had to do. I know a lot of people like Richardson as like a sleeper MVP candidate. I'm not sure I go that far, but I think it's just improvement, right? I mean, it's just the quarterback position is very difficult to learn. Probably the jump from the college ranks to the pros for a quarterback has to be very significant in terms of speed and talent and competition, et cetera. So I think he's just become like a darling to get better. And I think a lot of people looking at it, well, he can't get much worse. So, we might as well just say he's going to get better and go forward that way.
last one. What do you think Jahan's role is in Philly?
Slot.
It's a good question. They're very smart people there, so they wouldn't have gotten him if they didn't think that he'd be able to impact it in some way. I think his best use as a deep threat that people are going to forget about, right? Like I can easily see the highlights of, defensive coordinators kicking themselves, wondering why Dotson was so open, right? With A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and even Paris Campbell in the slot. So if a guy like Dotson kind of squirt free, I think we'll see those highlights. And if he's the fourth receiver on a Super Bowl contender and doesn't contribute a lot, well, he's probably not being asked to contribute a lot. So that's kind of where I see him going there.